Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Insight podcast. Normally on these we talk to the cast and the crew of the film, but today we've got something a little bit different. We've got Bailey here, can't get rid of him, but we've also got a nice special guest. So I'll let you introduce yourself and what you do in your involvement in this project.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. My name's Ollie. I'm the artistic director of The Greenhouse, which is the UK's first zero waste performance space. So we specialize in telling sustainable stories in a sustainable way and helping others to tell their sustainable stories as well, which is why we're really, really thrilled to be working with Insight to help the film be as sustainable as it can be in practice, and exploring how you guys can implement sustainable practice on set. And among the cast and crew as well, kind of in other spheres. So really excited to be here and really excited to be working with you guys.
So how did the Greenhouse as a company, would you call it that? Is it a company?
Well, it's
I know the lingo, me.
Yeah, I won't get into the details. To be honest, it's a little bit boring, but it's a project led by a company that I run called Boxing Theatre. And the question was how did we kind of get
sort of how did it come about?
Well, so I have a very exceptionally talented friend called Mr. Henry Roberts, really, really lovely man, brilliant writer. And a couple of years ago, he came to us with an idea for a show that was basically about like violence towards nature and the natural environment and how we treat the planet that we live on. And it was a really, really interesting concept, really, really interesting show. And I fell in love with it when I read it for the first time. As I say, I think he's a really brilliant writer. And in developing this concept, we were kind of thinking, okay, it's really important. This is a story that needs to be told, but we can't just chuck it on stage. It deserves to be told in a way that mirrors the values that it's trying to talk about and the awareness that it's trying to raise. So, the short version of the story is that at that point, one thing basically led to another. And we were thinking, okay, could we do a show that is sustainable? Could we maybe do a show that's zero waste? How can we do a show that's zero waste if we're doing it in a venue that produces lots of waste? Do we need to build our own theatre? Yes, we might need to build our own theatre. Okay, looks like we're building a theatre. It's kind of what happened there. One thing kind of led to another, and it was picked up really well. We were at the Edinburgh Fringe last year, and that went really, really positively. It was received really well. We appeared in a number of different news outlets like The Guardian, The New York Times. We were on Radio 4 as well, which was really, really fantastic. And so that's kind of how the theatre arm of the organisation got started. And then over the last kind of 6 to 12 months, we've really been examining what it means for us to tell sustainable stories or to tell stories in a zero waste way. A big part of the premise of us as an organisation is helping people building capacity for sustainability, basically helping people to build their capacity for building a more sustainable future. And so we started really delving into what it means for us to tell those sustainable stories. And we realized that hopefully we have something to offer to help other people, be that in arts, be that in storytelling or any other field really, to make sure that the stories that they're telling are sustainable from a creative perspective, but also from a kind of a business perspective, how to communicate their sustainability and how to build it into the work they're doing. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Good. Hold on, just pause 1 second. I'm going to also shut the window because we're getting some background noise.
I can't hear any background noise.
There was a plane. Sorry, as you were.
Yeah. So Bailey, obviously you know Ollie, friends from university, I believe. Yes. That's a response that says a great many things. But so, what was it that sort of drew you to Greenhouse as an organisation and working with them on Insight?
Yeah, so I'd seen through uni and stuff, seen all the work that they were doing, and then was sort of lucky enough to be asked to come and film their productions that they were doing. And so we spent a day filming all of the films that they were doing as sort of for archival reasons more than anything probably, but then for them to use in the future as well. So I got to see all the work that they were doing, the venue they'd created, which correct me if I'm wrong, but it's all been built from recycled or secondhand material, secondhand wood.
Yes.
There was all natural lighting. So it was when you had the nighttime shows, it was just completely dark, and they incorporated that into the story. So almost the story developed into it becoming nighttime as it got nighttime. So it was this amazing sort of atmospherical use of space and into a play, into a story. And really, the players engaged with the environment, and the whole venue was used to tell the story. And so it was an incredibly powerful way of, for me, as Ollie's kind of said, using storytelling to be able to engage with the environment and how the two can come together. Now, for me, film is in lots of ways a very different ballgame, and in a lot of ways has not been, the sustainability aspect has not been explored, has not been brought into consideration in many ways, apart from your sort of maybe generic ones, which are kind of coming across, society now, and in paper cups, or not trying to use plastic, etc., etc. But we want to take that a step further, and the work that the guys have been doing with greenhouses now come into that almost consultation factor, that they know they're experts in sort of sustainability, or constantly educating themselves on sustainable issues and climate issues and etc., and how that works with the arts. And I thought this was a great opportunity for sort of two young companies, one slightly more developed than ours, obviously, to be able to work together to explore how we can cross over into film and bring that on. And
not that much more developed, I would say.
Yeah. Well, we've known each other for 3 months on a screen that big.
I think I would add to that as well. I think the point you make about young organizations is definitely really valid. This is definitely an issue that young people really, I mean, everyone cares about it, but it's an issue that young people, I think, do particularly care about. And I think it's really exciting as basically as the artists of the future, as the arts leaders, as filmmakers, as theatre makers, as business leaders, as country leaders of the future. I think it's a really exciting opportunity to start actually sharing the knowledge that we have, sharing the experience that we have together, and creating this kind of almost like open source pool of knowledge that allows us to say, we're going to make really great film, we're going to make really great art, and we don't have to sacrifice the planet to do that. We don't have to give the world up in order to do that.
It's one of the big things which, as a company, we're trying to take on board, is that idea that as young filmmakers, we are the next generation, and the habits which we start instilling in ourselves now is what's going to carry forwards into the future. And that doesn't matter whether it's, producing and sort of organizing the whole system, and our sort of eco team that we've put together, sort of coming up with the ideas behind it, or just educating an actor or an extra who comes onto set as to the ethos behind the company. That is something which will then get taken forwards and enhanced and educated. It's all about educating people, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, it really is. I think one of the people that I work with said something along the lines of, knowledge is a tonic to inaction, in that once you kind of have once you have the education, once you know what's going on, once you know the finer details, it's very difficult to keep using disposable coffee cups when you learn that actually they're not recyclable, for example, because also it is that is just a small change to make. And yeah, I completely agree. I think education, especially for young creators, but for anyone really, plays a really, really important role, and makes it difficult to keep doing the things that we're doing, which is obviously really, really good. It means that we build a future and build a practice that's better for everyone, really.
And of course, that starts this production with us, with the team that we've got working in front of and behind the camera. And of course, a lot of us were unaware of a lot of these things, but you very graciously, I can't remember when it was now, but you came and had a wonderful talk with all the team, and went through a lot of the stuff that we've taken on board. And not to spring it on you, because you used a PowerPoint and stuff in that, I seem to remember. But what are some of the things that you sort of communicated to us, and that to keep in mind moving forwards, and to help keep our sets just sustainable?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of things that any individual, and especially any group, can do. When it comes to the arts, most of the work, it comes down to two categories, basically. The category of inspiring. So obviously arts have an amazing potential to connect with people and to help people connect with issues on a deeply personal, deeply emotional level. And so can really inspire people to, and empower people even to change and to be the change that they want to see. So that's one kind of area. And then the other area, which I think we spoke about much more, was the idea of acting. So if the content you're making isn't specifically about sustainability, there's still a lot of active steps that any person can take and any group can take to be a bit more to be more sustainable on set and offset. Because what we must remember is, the arts are a hugely public facing industry, and they're very visible. So we have the potential to really set an example in a number of different ways, and hopefully people will kind of see that and follow that. Really, the tips that I was trying to give were split into 3 categories. So tips around shopping, basically, when you're buying set and props and stuff. The thing with that really is if you can, think secondhand. So you say the 3 R's are very important: reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce being try and cut down on your waste. Reuse being trying to reuse something before you throw it away. And then recycle, the last port of call, is make sure that you put something in recycling rather than throwing it in the bin. And those things are in order of importance. So if you are going to have to buy something, trying to reuse rather than necessarily buying something new. That means buying secondhand, looking at Gumtree and eBay, both brilliant websites. Gumtree is my best friend. I spend a lot of time there. And some other really fantastic websites that I use for, costumes or building materials and that kind of thing. And obviously charity shops, although unfortunately, maybe not right now. But I do love a good charity shop trip. And then there are also other things, if you are going to have to buy things new, try and make sure that the things that you're buying are sustainable. FSC certified wood or paper, for example, making sure you buy clothes with natural materials. Microfibers from synthetic materials are really damaging for our oceans. Trying to buy local, thinking about the packaging that you've got. So that's kind of the broad category of shopping tips. And then kind of thinking about practical on-set advice. That was more kind of what can you do in the day-to-day running of when you're actually filming. And there were kind of a few things there, like, I don't know, but trying to buy local when you're buying food for the team. Dare I say it, but trying to do a vegetarian day if you can. Think about it. Making sure you're turning off your big lights during breaks. Setting up recycling bins, even on set, just to really help people to do at least a third of those 3 R's. Using public transport, although again, that's obviously difficult in the current climate. And I think the most important one, really across all these categories in a way, but across this one in specifically, was keeping each other honest. You don't want to be nasty about it, and you don't want to be too much of necessarily a stickler about it. But these kind of things and these kind of initiatives only really work when we kind of do them together. We have a lot of power as individuals, and when we come together, we have even more power. So yeah, making sure that we are asking the right questions of each other. If we see someone turning up on set with a single-use bottle, for example, just saying, did you need to buy that? And it sounds like a pain, but at the end of the day, it is really helpful, and it helps to keep everyone honest, basically. And then the final category was basically just kind of watching yourself and educating yourself, making sure, at the end of the day, it's really important to take responsibility for your own sustainability. There's a proverb that I've been trying to look up for ages. So it might be fake, but it's a proverb that my rabbi, told me when I was a kid. And it's the idea that if you want to change the world, you have to change your country. And if you want to change your country, you have to change your community. And if you want to change your community, you have to change your street. And if you want to change your street, you have to change your house. And if you want to change your house, you have to change yourself. So change, even on a global scale, comes from within. So at the bottom line, the most important thing that any one of us can do is educate ourselves and just make sure that we are enacting sustainable actions in ways that work for us and in ways that make sense for us. Cutting out single-use plastics if we can, trying to prepare packed lunches, even kind of, researching online and taking initiative to do that research is a really big step in the right direction, because as I mentioned before, knowledge is the tonic to inaction. And so I've seen, once people start to discover the reality of the situation, often that's all that they really need to start making those small changes that in the end really, really do add up. And if you don't mind, I would just add as an addendum to all of that, if you ever think that what you're doing is insignificant, think again, because it isn't. Every single action that you can possibly take, even if it's choosing just one day today to not buy a single-use plastic bottle when you're down at the shop, every single action, every single time you make that choice, you're making a positive choice. And that might seem small, and especially when people talk about like the impact that big corporations are having and the work that governments can do, it might seem small, but it is so important. It changes the attitude of our society. It changes the attitude of others. It normalizes a sustainable practice in everyday life as well as in work. And it means that, you know, at the end of the day, there is a very clear, demonstrable appetite for a world that is fairer and that is greener and that is more eco-friendly. So yeah, power to the people.
I think what's really interesting about that from my perspective is that talk started with you applying your knowledge into our film, and specifically therefore I'm talking about the medium of film. But actually all the things that you're saying are just general to society. There isn't anything there that is necessarily specific to what you should do if you are shooting a film or what you should do if you were doing theatre. We're talking about it in construct of the arts and the importance that we can potentially bring to the arts through this. But actually everything is so universal, everything is so applicable to everyday life. And I think that's a really interesting thing, which I was very keen to bring into the film. And I know it's sort of something which Greenhouse is trying to do, is actually turn around and saying the arts is a tool of saying this message. It is another way of not just reading it in the newspaper or, you know, a leaflet or hearing it on the news that someone has built something which is really good for the environment, but actually bringing it into entertainment, into TV screens, onto films, onto, you know, into your theatres, and an alternate way of spreading a message effectively that it isn't that hard. Like you can do this. It just takes a little bit of, you know, a little bit of thought, a little bit of altering what you do. But actually, you know, we're not doing anything magical here to try and save the planet. It's just.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that attitude is really, really brilliant, because I think it shows, as I mentioned before, the idea of like normalizing sustainability and sustainable action. You know, the idea of a sustainable actor or of and I mean a person who is sustainable, not a performer necessarily. The idea of a sustainable actor in the past has been a little bit controversial. You know, it's you have an image of someone who, you know, has long hair and smells really bad and never washes, which I promise isn't me. I've taken to, obviously you can't see this because we're on a podcast, but I've taken to wearing button-up shirts in all my meetings now, just because it's very easy when people think about sustainability to immediately jump to a certain type of person, you know. But in the process of making sustainability, in the process of demonstrating the simple actions that can make a lifestyle more sustainable, what we do is we slowly chip away at that stereotype. And no longer is it shocking for a person to try and think and do things sustainability. No longer is it shocking for a person to try and think and do things in a sustainable way, you know. And that's just, it sounds like a small thing, but that's really important, and that mindset is essential. And it's what allows us to, I don't know, hopefully build a more sustainable future, basically. You're absolutely right. A lot of the things that we're talking about are applicable elsewhere, and they should be used elsewhere. Yeah.
Do you think it's important to target those stereotypes then, as you say, kind of detract from the image that people already perceive as being that, to create a positive impact? Or,
I mean, I'm aware of it. I'm aware of that stereotype. I try to work. I try to present myself in a way that is anti that, you know, against that stereotype, because, well, I just think, as with most stereotypes, to be honest, it comes from a place of non-reality. You know, it comes from a place of like, you know, snowballing and making the stereotype out something that it isn't, and especially because we at the Greenhouse are really excited to try and to be working with you know, businesses outside of the arts as well. And it's really important that we can talk to those people and say, you know, take me seriously. I'm a real person. And the stuff that I'm talking about isn't just about the planet. It's also about the bottom line. It's about saving you money. That is something that, not to be crass, but that's something that Bailey and I spoke about briefly, is the idea of, you know, when you purchase set and props secondhand, at the end of the day, those set and props are going to be cheaper. And I mean, that's something that I've been doing since I was, you know, going on stage, is looking at set and props secondhand, because it's cheaper. It makes it easier to do. but sorry, I've completely gone off topic. To answer the question, yes, I think it's really important to be aware of those stereotypes. We don't necessarily need to be protesting against them or like going out to fight them, but in saying in this work that we are all doing now, what we're basically saying is, I don't need to be this type of person to care about the planet. I don't need to fulfill this stereotype that people are putting onto me to make sure that the work that I'm doing has a positive impact on the world's natural environment. So what I guess I'm saying is, every day that we take a sustainable action, we are dismantling that stereotype, and dismantlement of that stereotype allows sustainability to be something that isn't niche, isn't insular, but actually is kind of normal and cool. So someone turns on your film and isn't at all, one day someone turns on your film and isn't at all surprised that it was made in a sustainable manner.
One thing I want to pick up on as well is something which you said a few times, which is if you can. And I think that's a really interesting phrase, because I think one thing that you've almost reinforced to us is that there are going to be circumstances where you can't avoid, doing something which is potentially less sustainable. But what it is about is just being conscious and almost just asking a question of, well, is this almost the last resort? Is this absolutely necessary? But not to beat yourself up over it if you can't. We all have to drive to work. We'll, all have to do something, but it's then taking the steps to think, well, is that essential? Can I actually take public transport? Can I do that? What are your thoughts on that kind of ethos, that this isn't almost like a hard line, cut everything bad out, whatever bad is, and, follow that, but actually to just be trying to do your best and be conscious of it?
Well, I think, I completely agree. I think the problem with sustainable discourse is when you tell someone you need to do this and it's black and white, full stop, you need to never drive again, that person is immediately going to be like, I mean, that's not achievable for me, so why bother? And that kind of communication is, I think, just really unhelpful. It says that you're either going to be 100% or 0%. And there's a very famous phrase that's been bouncing around on the internet for years. And I'm going to definitely say it wrong, but it's something along the lines of, we don't need one perfect vegan. We need millions of people doing veganism imperfectly, I am a great example of an imperfect vegetarian, in that I love a turkey on Christmas. I do. I couldn't not, it's great. It's a big part of the tradition. And I cut myself some slack because 364 days of the year, I'm a vegetarian. But it's really, really about not telling people this is the be all and end all of what sustainability means, and if you don't do this, then you're a bad person. It's about saying, how can you look at your life, reflect on yourself, be mindful, and think, where are the places that I can make these changes? And I think it's important to consider, like a good example in this is plastic straws, right? Last year or the year before, whenever it was, everyone was hating on plastic straws. And don't get me wrong, they're bad. They are undoubtedly, they have a terrible impact on the environment, and they are bad for like sea creatures in particular. But there was a really underrepresented voice in this debate of people with certain access needs who would struggle to drink beverages from like restaurants or shops or coffee shops, whatever, without a plastic straw. And obviously they weren't really taken into thought. They weren't really thought about in this discussion. I'm not saying that. I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that like because of that group of people, plastic straws necessarily need to be back in. But what I'm saying is, they are a group of people for whom, for them, maybe plastic straws couldn't be something that they could do. But then the question is, okay, so I know that I can't do plastic straws, but like, can I cut down on my plastic water bottle usage, for example? Where else can the cuts be made? There are going to be plenty of places in your life where the things that you do, unfortunately, or for whatever reason, have to be the things that you do. The reality of the situation is, as we try to move towards a more sustainable society where we're all enacting the sustainable actions that we can, I believe that in our current economic system, that means we're voting with our wallets, and companies that don't support that kind of system begin to die out, and companies that might support that kind of system begin to emerge. And slowly the wheels of capitalism turn for better or for worse. And they mean that in an ideal world, at least, we can start to it snowballs. Basically, we show appetite for more sustainable options, so all of a sudden you can't buy single-use plastic water bottles anymore, and water's only found in cans, for example. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big old Marxist. I'm just saying we live in a system and we should learn how to.
It's going to take a whole different turn to this podcast now.
Feel free to cut that bit out if you don't want me to be a Marxist in your podcast. But
What's our stance on political views? On that,
yeah, go on.
On that kind of not necessarily Marxism, but on kind of politics and how things are at the moment in sort of society and things. How are you finding with your company and we've been trying to make a film during this ridiculous pandemic. How are things coming from like your end of process?
Yeah.
And how do you think things will be changing as we come out of it?
Yeah.
And what are you looking at doing from like your not just a sustainable point, but also adapting to circumstances?
Yeah. It's a great question. I'm trying to work out how to phrase this in a way that's good. The pandemic hasn't hurt us as a company hugely because we're quite early doors, so it's not necessarily it hasn't been a huge hit to us as an organization. I also just at that point would like to stress that there are plenty of people that I know who it has affected, personally on a very, very deep level, and it is without a doubt, it's without a doubt the largest tragedy that I've experienced in my lifetime is the current situation. Just to be very, clear about that. I think that going forward, what we have seen is an increase in people turning to their local community and turning to nature in a big way to kind of heal themselves during this time of crisis. I don't know about you, and this is anecdotal, so I suppose I'd be interested to do a bit more digging on this. But a lot of my very close friends have taken to walking and hiking, which they'd never done before. But it was kind of the only option in a way. If you weren't a runner, it's kind of the only option to kind of get outside and get out and about. So I think that people have really turned to nature in a way that they haven't in a very long time, and I'm very optimistic that is something that can be harnessed by new and young groups who are, if not necessarily directly talking about sustainability, at least acting in a sustainable way. I think I'm a big believer of the fact that the key reason that people feel unempowered or ineffective when discussing the climate crisis is that they have struggled to connect emotionally with the natural environment, and instead have kind of been forced to try and connect with a huge, colossal crisis that it seems impossible to affect. I find that when I step out, there's a little forest near where I live, and when I step out there, it's a very peaceful place, and like there are some really, really great trees in that forest. I know that sounds weird, but there are some great trees, and just kind of looking at them, I'm like, oh man, this is cool. And you kind of think like, I'm not like save the trees, but you kind of think like, I don't know, you have a tremendous sense of feeling connected with the world around you, and I think that's really, really important, and something that we maybe lose when we don't get to spend time in nature, which makes it very easy to make a lot of waste and make a lot of pollution and use a lot of energy and that kind of thing. So I do think that, I at least I hope that coming out of this crisis, we will see a turn towards at least people being more sustainably inclined. The problem is capitalism, in that the problem is there a market response to that? Are there organizations, are there companies that can feed that demand? Because if there aren't, then people probably will go back to their old habits and keep doing what they have been doing before. I think the government has a lot of issues. I think it's really great that they have started they've put some money into a green recovery. I think we need to see more money in a green recovery. I think that's really, really important because, as I say, if we can generate jobs and if we can generate business in the green sector now and over the next kind of 6 to 12 months, there is a real opportunity to change appetite, I think, and change practice and change lifestyle in that direction. But the options need to be there, if that makes sense. People need to be able to have those choices. Sustainability needs to not be difficult anymore. It needs to be we need to make it really, really, really easy for as many people as we possibly can. That's what we're trying to do at the Greenhouse in terms of the work that we're making. And when we're talking with you guys and with anyone else that we're talking to, we're trying to help them make it as easy as possible for their customers or for their viewers or for anyone that they're kind of engaging with. so yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on what things are going to be like going forward. And then in terms of the greenhouse, we are looking at some really exciting work, hopefully up in Bedford, which is kind of just about an hour's north of London, really cool little town. Great partnership with The Place there, which is a fantastic little theatre. Looking at doing some work in London. We've got a few feelers out, which is looking good at the moment. One thing I should mention is we're going to be going back to the Fringe next year, and we're currently working on a really exciting campaign with a company called Staging Change, called the Future Fringe campaign, which is about basically helping to imagine what a more positive future for the Fringe would look like. And I think that can hopefully have some impact outside of just the Edinburgh Fringe itself. Another very long-winded answer, so sorry, but
no, it's great, and it's so exciting to hear the sort of changes and the way that you're instilling positive action into going forwards. And I think it's something which I'm hoping to carry on and with the team as well, in terms of our yearly plan, in terms of when the film starts to come out and be released and distributed, is keeping up the conversation and talking about what we can be doing. And I think for you to be able to be taking that hopefully to a bigger scale, whether that's small, any scale really, but to be able to take that to the Fringe, for instance, where I obviously got to have great discussions with you last year about the problems with the Fringe, and I know you were in conversation with people as well about that at a sort of higher level. And how we can change that is a fantastic thing to be part of. And I agree. I think it's, as we come out of this, it's about maintaining that momentum. And one way we can do that is through the arts, and to keep that conversation going and keep it relevant and reactive to the times that we're going through, and Absolutely. Bring people back to these moments and to those feelings that you said about nature. I agree. I've got lots of friends who are a lot of turned to baking, but a lot of others have also, started planting veg patches or just, anything like that. Which they never would have done before. But
I think if you think about sustainable attitudes, I really think the arts are kind of the runway in a way, in that what we can do through the arts is keep the momentum going and going and going, and hope that through that work, and believe that through that work, we can encourage sustainable action in other sectors, across, and there are plenty of other sectors where there have been great leaps and bounds in sustainability. But yeah, hoping that we can encourage that in other sectors, so that as eventually we extend the runway to a point where we can take off and everyone's sustainable and lives happily ever after. Hopefully. That's the goal.
That's brilliant. No, I completely agree.
Sorry, I thought that was going to be a question. Sorry.
No, I don't. I've just been sat here listening, and just every time we mention what bowls, just wincing, because I notice I've got this.
Oh no!
No, I know. You said you like halfway through an answer, and then I realised I was like, "That's awful." We were doing this.
Let me share a little tip with you. Do you live in a flat or a house?
House.
Right. Do you have a little garden?
Yeah.
Before the end of the day, what you're going to do? You're going to finish that water bottle, right? You're going to get yourself a safety pin and a pair of scissors and a stick. And what you're going to do is you're going to make 2 holes right at the bottom, almost at the very bottom, about a centimeter, 2 centimeters up from the bottom. You're going to make 2 holes on either side. You're going to cut out a circle either side that's about a centimeter in diameter. And then you're going to make 2 little holes underneath the holes that you've made with your pin. And you're going to stick your stick all the way through, right? Oh, you also need some string, because you're going to get your pin and you're going to make 2 little holes at the top, and you're going to thread some string through those holes. You'll tie it up, fill it up with bird seed. You got yourself a bird feeder. There you are.
And if you want more tips like this, head to the Greenhouse YouTube channel.
Head to the YouTube channel. Yeah. No, sorry. But what I mean by that is really interesting. You flag that up. So for the listeners at home, Johnny has a single-use plastic bottle on him at the moment. But to be honest, firstly, even the very fact that you had the thought process of I probably shouldn't have this, that's I mean, it's you're thinking.
And I have been using it, reusing it for
sure
as long as we've been in a group working on this film. Just filling it from a tap. But obviously you mention it, and I'm just like, oh no.
I would be. I don't know the details of this, and I used to do that all the time. I would be wary. Apparently, it's not good for you. I'm not.
Oh no.
Certain. But like, if you're feeling okay, then
go bird feed.
Crazy. But firstly, the thought process is amazing, because it's very easy to just buy a plastic water bottle and not think about it, you know. But the act of thinking about it is really, really positive. And then the next thing to think about is, okay, great. So I'm now aware. I've made myself aware. I've educated myself. I know that this isn't this. When I'm finished with this, this is going to have could have a negative impact on the natural environment. What can I do to limit that negative impact? You can turn it into a plant pot. You can turn it into a bird feeder, as I was just suggesting. You can maybe turn it into a bird house. I think maybe I can't remember. What else? You can turn it into a little greenhouse. Even that's what I do. I make little greenhouses. Yeah, like there are a lot, but basically,
never leaves, does it? It's just any chance we
yeah, that's. But do you see what I'm saying? Like then it's okay. You get into the reduce, reuse, recycle. So you have gone past the reduce phase, and you're into the reuse phase. Is there a way for me to reuse this without throwing it away? And then the last port of call is to at least make sure that you kind of recycle it at the end of the day. Plastics a real tough one though. Like there's debate, but I personally think the debate is nonsense. But there's debate around the best materials for containers. The argument in favor of plastic is that it's lightweight, so it uses less emissions when it's being transported. One thing that we have to remember is that this statistic is so true and so blows my mind. Every piece of plastic that's ever been made is still on the planet. It's still here. I mean, well, it might have been shot out into space, I suppose, but it still exists is the point. So yeah. Sorry, my brother just came home. I'm going to do that a little bit again. Every bit of plastic that was ever made still exists, either on the planet or it's been shot out into space or whatever. So yeah, whenever I hear that's crazy to me. The problem with plastic is it is not hugely recyclable. So it can be recycled into things, but it loses its integrity. It often has to be recycled down a supply chain into things that are kind of less useful. So a plastic bottle won't be recycled into a plastic bottle. It'll be recycled into like a bench, something like that. Whereas things like tin or aluminium from cans or glass from bottles or whatever is reusable pretty much infinitely. So it can pretty much be reused just again and again and again and again and again. So that's really, for me, that's the most important thing. We can get to a point where transporting those materials is zero carbon, through innovations in transport technologies and fuel technology. But what we can't do is get to a point where the plastic isn't going to stay on the planet for another 10,000 years. So yeah, it's really crazy. So try and use glass, basically. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That is crazy. That is scary.
Yeah. And things you wouldn't even think about, like we were talking about, I believe, scripts and stuff. I think Arjun was mentioning about he likes to have a physical copy of the script and things like that. Is it bamboo paper? Or am I getting that wrong?
So the inks were what we were talking about then. Yeah. That's something a little bit different. So what I was suggesting was scripts are a really good example of do what you can, because, I don't think it isn't the end of the world to be printing, a handful of copies of script for the cast. But what you want to make sure you're doing is that you're only printing one copy for each of the cast members, and that you're kind of avoiding your paper use elsewhere, and that where possible, you're using FSC certified paper. FSC is I mentioned it before, but they're the Forestry Standards Commission, and they just make sure that for like cutting down trees is being done in a sustainable way. So more trees are being planted and stuff. So yeah, all of that is perfectly doable, and again, it's an example of just kind of trying to do what you can. Bamboo ink, I think it's bamboo, but I always forget exactly what it's made out of. It's a printer technology. It's another discussion entirely, really, but it's for posters and flyers and that kind of thing, and it's about how those kind of things can be printed in a more sustainable way. A word of advice that I would always give, and this applies to pretty much anything. If you're really excited about buying something sustainably, that's brilliant. Definitely do that. If you can, try and buy that sustainable thing from an organization that only sells sustainable things. If you're buying a piece of sustainable fashion from the ASOS sustainable line, that's like definitely really good. Definitely 100% do that. If you want to look around a little bit elsewhere and buy from an organization that only sells sustainable clothes, what that means is you're your wallet, the amount that you're paying is really doubling down on the support that you're trying to offer. Basically, you're really doubling down, saying this product from an organization that creates this product, and it basically tells, in a bit of a roundabout way, it tells organizations that that's kind of the thing that you want to be buying. So I mentioned with Bamboo Ink, there are a lot of printers that will offer Bamboo Ink. I keep saying bamboo, and I'm just not certain it is bamboo, but it's something.
For bringing up this bamboo thing, and it might be totally wrong.
Sorry, that's on me. That's on me. But yeah, there are a lot of printers that will offer it, but there are also a handful of printers that will only offer it, like they will offer exclusively biodegradable inks. So check them out if you can. If you can avoid printing posters, then do. That's the best thing. Reduce. But if you can't, then making sure they're recyclable by making sure the inks are biodegradable and that kind of thing is good. It's a good action.
I think there are lots of things we're going to have to start including into ours.
Yeah, I mean, we've already started because, as you say, we've got an eco team, which is a couple of members of our groups. I don't know exactly who it is, which is awful, isn't it? But,
Esme, Charlie,
Anna,
and Natalie are our eco team.
Good, nice.
Yeah, and they've already, been talking about some of the things we're going to be doing. So, bringing our own lunches in our lunch boxes. And in regards to, of course, the pandemic and how we're going to tackle that, because that was a point that you mentioned, is that, with PPE, a lot of that is one use, is disposable plastic. It's not very friendly. And so the way we're looking at tackling that is we're using fabric masks. Everyone has two, and then we, use one whilst the other's washing. And I think we're going to focus less on gloves and just sanitizing and washing our hands as much as possible. And it's all small things like that.
Yeah, that's really good. Can I just add to that? I think I am very much not a public health expert, so I don't know exactly what the coronavirus guidelines are. But again, this is just an example of like a perfect attitude. It's really easy. Firstly, obviously there is a global pandemic, and it's really important that we're protecting people's lives and we're preserving public health. As much as we physically possibly can, in any and every way that we can. But I think in the world in which we live, it's very easy for us to then jump to, okay, so I'm just going to use all these disposable masks and all these disposable gloves, et cetera, without necessarily thinking about the impact or the effectiveness really of those actions and whether there are other actions. So fabric masks are a really great example. I've got one that's made from linen, so natural fabrics. I believe it's got elastic around the ears actually, so that's not natural, but like the actual mask itself. And then also kind of thinking about like hand wash and washing hands. Maybe it might be worth looking into if you can buy eco-friendly hand wash. You might be able to pick some up wherever you guys are shooting. You probably will. You're in Greenwich, right? Yeah. You should be able to. But yeah, I think that thought process is really, really simple and really, really important. And that's something that we can all do right now. Is go out and purchase a mask made from a natural material. And they're just as effective. They're gonna keep you safe. They're gonna keep everyone else safe. To my knowledge, again, not a public health expert, but yeah, that's a really, really, really great step in the right direction, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think again that's really important. That fact, as you say about these things are never about sacrificing safety, especially in an instance like this. But there are still steps within that at which you can still be conscious and maintain that safe aspect.
Yeah,
and probably as well. It's not as expensive. Like you can still find ways of doing things sustainably, which minimize cost, and that you're not
absolutely
bulk buying stuff.
Absolutely, and I think that really for me, I would say the thought process is, what do I need to do? So I need to keep the team safe. We need to have masks. We need to have gloves. Whatever. But that can apply to pretty much anything. What do I need to do? How can is it possible for me to make any changes within what I need to do to make it more sustainable? Can I deliver what I need to do whilst considering sustainability? And then, if yes, do it. And if no, okay, fine. That's not a problem at all. Like, think about, repeat this process elsewhere until you find somewhere that you really can. And again, this is a really good example of that. And that kind of basically taking action and actually working, hopefully.
It will. Definitely.
No, yeah, absolutely. Good.
Especially, yeah. It's been fantastic to be able to speak to you over the last few weeks or whatever, and get that sort of insight, no pun intended, on.
I think that pun was fully intended, Bailey. Let's be honest.
Fully intended. Gotta get it in there somewhere, haven't you? But to be able to, it's sort of looping back around in the conversation, but to be able to educate and to inform on different areas and what we can be doing, and just the little simple things, especially as for a lot of us, this is, well, for everyone, this is a whole new environment and world that we're re-entering into after lockdown. And it's amazing to be able to be focusing onto that, not just making a film, but then thinking about how we can be actively being sustainable within that, re-entering the world and making the film. I'm finding it a very rewarding experience to be doing. And I think the rest of the team are as well. From their response has been fantastic to what you've brought on board. So it's definitely such a positive impact.
Yeah, I'm really, really glad. And it's my absolute pleasure. It's really been a great experience. The team is fantastic. Everyone has been very friendly and really receptive and chatty, which is lovely. It's always nice to sometimes difficult when I kind of give these presentations, as the presentations that we did, sometimes difficult when no one's really engaged and when there aren't any questions. But there were lots of questions, lots of very interested faces, which is always really exciting. I think, just kind of the thought that I would leave with really is going back into this new post lockdown world. If that is happening now, or if that's going to be happening in 6 months or 12 months, obviously we don't really know exactly what the future holds. And within all of that, but within all of that, your actions matter. Every single individual's actions have an impact, and we've seen that with the crisis that we're currently dealing with the coronavirus crisis, and it's true, with the climate crisis as well. Every single action that you take can have a really, really positive impact. It's about not giving up, basically, not being too hard on yourself, being lenient with yourself, and at the same time educating yourself and knowing that today this one choice to not buy this plastic water bottle means that plastic water bottle isn't going to end up in the ocean somewhere. So yeah, it's about that kind of individual level of empowerment, and how can that apply to pretty much anything. I had to think about it for a second. Yeah, to pretty much anything, I would say, film or theatre or any any industry at all, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ollie, thank you so much for joining us today and giving up your time.
Oh, it's my birthday. It's a laugh. That's what I rather do, honestly. No, it's my absolute pleasure. I really I've enjoyed being here, and I really always enjoy talking to you guys. It's really, really fun, and I love how excited you are about the project, but about sustainability within the project as well. It's very, very, very good to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're gonna leave it there. So thank you for watching this very special episode of the podcast. I don't know if our crowdfunder will still be live by the time this goes up. I'm not sure exactly when we're releasing it, because the deadline for that is the 20th. Is it not? Unless I've got that wrong. Which
no, it is the 20th.
The 20th, yeah. So if this goes up before then, and you haven't donated, don't miss your chance.
I have donated, and I am a happy donor. It made me very happy in my soul. So do donate.
Yes, and make sure to follow us on all our social media. So links to which you'll be able to find them on the website or on the YouTube channel. They'll be all over the place.
Make sure to check out the Greenhouse too, and their YouTube channel.
Of course,
top tips of what to do.
Good job you jumped in, because if it just left that not crediting Greenhouse, that would have been.
Please do. Please check us out. Facebook, Instagram, sometimes Twitter, but not very often. And the YouTube is starting now, so yeah, check that out. But mainly these guys.
You can find the link to Greenhouse on our website, so you can also check it out straight through that as well.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for coming again, and we'll leave it there. Thank you. Bye-bye.